We'll get started in about 30 seconds here, just so we can get going. Health and Safety Committee to order. Reminding everyone that while this is a committee of the whole, this committee makes recommendations that are finalized by the County Board of Commissioners at the end of the month. We'll start by rising for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Fleece.
Present.
Max Bauer. Here. Thomas.
Here.
Richardson.
Here.
Stepka. Friend.
Here.
Inman.
Here.
Hooper.
Okay,
Picking up signs.
I think I need to amend the agenda before we do the approval of the minutes of July 7th, because we noted that on the agenda, there was no place to approve the minutes of the closed session that was held on July 7th. So I'd like a motion to amend the agenda first, so as that when we're taking care of these minutes, we can approve both the regular minutes of the Public Safety Committee and the closed session that was held that morning.
That's so moved.
Support.
We have a motion by Richardson, supported by Max Bauer, to amend the motion. I'll need a roll call vote to amend the motion, please. So it takes 2/3 vote.
Okay. Commissioner Max Bauer.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Inman.
Yes.
Chairman Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so the amendment, or the agenda will be amended to include the special minutes of the closed session. So-
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
I
Fleece.
think I got missed.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, you did.
I got missed in the vote.
get called.
Mr. Fleece not getting called?
Please. I always forget to go back to the top.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, around it, we have 2/3 of the vote.
It was a
therefore
late night,
We have
you
the
know?
opportunity, have an opportunity to change the agenda. All right, so the first order of business will be approval of the regular minutes as provided for July 7th. Do I have a
So
motion?
moved. Support.
Motion by Thomas, supported by Inman, to approve the minutes. Only discussion that I would have in regard to that is, if you note on page 68, I believe it was, the sheriff department made a point about the fact that the number for the matching funds for the grant for the snowmobiles was different than it was on the, I'm sorry, I mean, it wasn't 68, it was right there somewhere. I didn't write it down. But the grant, the copay amount for the snowmobile thing was different in the minutes than is actually in fact the case of the grant.
I think they're going to talk about that when they talk about, if the item comes up, they were going to explain that.
Okay, so do we want to leave the minutes as they
Minutes are
were?
what was stated at the time,
Okay,
and I'm assuming that's the case. If that was the case, then you leave the minutes the way they are, and we correct it in this meeting.
okay. I just needed to point that out. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Now we'll have the minutes for the closed session were provided on your desk this morning. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Inman, supported by Richardson, to approve the minutes of the closed session of July 7th. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Richardson, Inman
Correct.
Richardson. Closed session minutes need to come back,
Session
guys.
minutes.
Okay, this brings us to the first opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to have public comment at this time? There will be a second opportunity at the end of the meeting. Seeing none, we'll move forward with the approval of the agenda. Are there any other additions?
I move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Motion by Richardson, supported by Max Bauer. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Any special order of business?
No.
Seeing none. The consent calendar, please.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file Veteran Services Activity Report through June 2010, Veteran Services Budget Subcommittee Minutes of July 20th, 2010, Veteran Services Draft Minutes of July 22nd, 2010, the Commission on Aging Report, the Commission on Aging Committee's Minutes for July, Community Relations, Executive, Finance and Program, 13th Circuit Community Corrections Report for May 2010, Prison Commitment Rate, the THIS Transition House, PRS Probation Residential Services, and TASC Traverse Area Support Services Reports, 2010 Baby Comfort Station Wrap-Up Data, the 2009-2010 H1N1 Influenza Report. The B, approval, Women's Healthcare Giving Circle Grant Acceptance, 2010 Emergency Management Performance Grant Approval, Community Corrections Contracts for 2011, and acceptance of bid for a snowmobile.
You have heard the consent calendar. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to have any of these items removed? Anyone from the commission wishing to have items removed? I believe because of the notes that are on the acceptance of the bid for the snowmobile about the difference in the county's copay on this grant or matching funds, we should pull that for further discussion by the undersheriff.
Motion to
Sheriff.
approve the consent calendar with removal of B4.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Friend, supported by Richardson, to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item B4. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
roll call on it.
Oh, I'm sorry, it has to be a roll call.
We're all tired, that's it.
Okay. Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Friend,
Yes.
Inman,
Yes.
Lees,
Yes.
Max Bauer.
Yes.
Chairman Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, let's move along to the department action items. The first is Northern Lakes Community Mental Health. Morning, Greg. Absolutely. Sorry, we should have brought one up ahead of you.
Good morning. My name is Greg Pathos. I'm the CEO at Northern Lakes Community Mental Health, and I'm joined this morning by Pat McLaughlin, who's a Grand Traverse County board member. So we're both very pleased to be here, and apologize for probably testing your patience with the amount of materials that were provided in advance. In spite of rumors, my brother's not an optometrist. In terms of the challenge to read the materials. We don't have frequent chances to present to the board, and it's important for us to be pretty transparent in what we do in terms of the information. So we had provided you our annual report, which is distributed into about 76,000 newspapers across our 6 counties. The fact sheet, which identifies budget information, meeting schedules, and service performance, information on persons served and cost for services. We included the Blank County Commission survey and the results of the 2009 County Commission survey. Want to spend a little bit of time today speaking about that. included the 2009 agency performance evaluation, similar format as presented last year, an attempt to quantify the work that we do looking at internal and external measures. There's a few bar graphs in your packet, looks at the results of the recovery enhancing environment, statewide pilot. We'll just spend a little bit of time on that. And then there's 3 documents in there that tie to jail services in terms of the Attorney General's opinion, a concept paper that was presented and discussed at the July board meeting, and the Attorney General's opinion that surrounds that. So our interest today is just within 10-15 minutes to try to highlight those issues, and certainly more than welcome to follow up in any meetings. And I know the undersheriff and I was just chatting again about getting a follow-up meeting as well to look at some of the details in regards to jail services. The County Commissioner Survey is a key part of the Board of Directors' ownership linkage plan. And every year we ask commissioners to assess us as to our performance as an organization. This year we're adding in healthcare providers and we're adding in schools to get a sense of how those stakeholders from our community believe we are performing. And not surprisingly, access is an issue that continues to arise, particularly access for services for persons who don't have Medicaid. As you're aware, the public mental health system has had significant reductions, as most publicly funded entities have had. We presently are facing somewhere statewide an additional $4 million to $58 million reduction to the public mental health system, and many CMH systems, and there's 46 around the state of Michigan, have created waiting lists to address that. And unfortunately, many of those persons are persons with significant need. So that's a big concern. We've met so far with the Crawford-Osabo school systems, and we have met with a regional advanced nurse practitioners group to try to gain some understanding. And as probably with many, there's confusion about who's eligible for services and what services are provided. I'm not sure if you have any additional comments from the board's perspective. So we would ask you to complete that survey. I have clean copies as well, but I think they were included in your 58 pages to do. We will complete a similar summary that you see in terms of the quantification as well as the recommendations. You'll see the recommendations that came from this board last year in terms of where we could improve. We take those very serious in terms of how we try to do a better job to meet your needs. The Recovery Enhancing Environment Survey, we piloted for the state of Michigan this instrument. And one of the recommendations that came through the survey last year was an attempt to try to understand what community mental health does, more than the abstraction that it seems to be. One of the things that we have worked very hard on is to change our system to be one that expects recovery, that expects people who have a severe mental illness to have lives of meaning in the community. So in front of you, I placed a spiral-bound notebook which has recovery stories. This is our second publication. And in front of you, some of you, I put a DVD, which also are faces and voices behind persons that we serve locally. We were pretty honored this year that our first DVD actually was selected to be shown at the New York City Mental Health Film Festival. So it's kind of a remarkable world out there of digital information in terms of how information becomes available. But if you had a chance to look at the results, it shows us in comparison to 2 other CMHs in Michigan. At this point, we don't have any other information. We're pretty pleased so far as to our comparative performance. It's also pretty interesting when you look at the similarities in regards to how people in those, it would be our 6 counties, 3 counties, and 1 CMH and another large county in southeast Michigan, how some of the priorities and gaps and needs are across the state. You see that particularly people from a recovery marker standpoint, which looks at what is it that I need to have in my life to really have lives of meaning, that issues such as economic independence is an important issue. And again, that was one of the recommendations from this group, was what are you doing to enhance employment opportunities for persons that you serve. So have a major commitment to that. We have had public meetings to share the results of our resurvey, to gain further understanding of what is it we can do to do better. The jail service information is certainly a bit of a moving target. Obviously, the Attorney General issued an opinion last calendar year at the request of an elected official from the Upper Peninsula. And his opinion certainly looked at financial responsibility for persons who were jail inmates as to mental health services. Certainly was not an opinion we requested or we wanted. Certainly our history and Sonny and other persons are great advocates for quality and more mental health services within our jails. Are areas that we have prioritized to the extent that we can. We had shared with the Sheriff's Departments and with you the jail services reports, so you can see the types of services and the amounts of services that we have provided in the Grand Traverse County Jail. But that remains an area of great concern to our board and to me as an individual, in terms of there are persons with significant mental health needs that are arrested and are booked and served within the jail. One of the things we're pretty pleased about in the past year is the evolution of the mental health court. We have a pilot mental health court in Grand Traverse County. As of July 19th, we have 21 persons who are under the jurisdiction of the mental health court, which, to my understanding, from the judicial side to the other support side, is viewed as a pretty positive change, because persons who otherwise may have remained in jail or perhaps created additional problems within the community are being more appropriately served at this time. And certainly a desire to continue to grow that program. With that one, there's a lot of interest in jail diversion. The jail services report speaks about jail services both from a pre-booking and post-booking diversion process. And that's certainly an area that we have great interest in trying to expand our work with law enforcement and the legal system in regards to appropriate diversion opportunities for persons who are arrested. So with that as somewhat of a rambling introduction, I'd certainly welcome any questions on any of the documents that were passed in advance, or particularly regarding the County Commission survey, the recovery enhancing environment, or issues related to jail services.
Comments, questions? Well, I guess I have 2 comments. As Greg and pretty much everyone else is aware, I've complained about our mental health services in our jail for the 12 years I've sat here. So I think that discussion will be ongoing. I absolutely do not agree with the Attorney General's opinion, and I'm pretty sure that our sheriff and our jail administrator don't also, But that being said, of the 5 counties in the Great Lakes Northern Mental Health, we need to realize that Grand Traverse County pays over 2/3 of their entire local contribution. So the enabling documents that created the community mental health distinctly describe how services will be provided in our jail. And I believe that we are, inadequately meeting the needs in our jail, and that's an ongoing discussion that we will continue to have. I appreciate the fact that we're still having the discussion.
Absolutely.
And I'm pretty sure we will continue to still have the discussion. So, any other comments?
Will you go over a little bit how you plan to, and based on the Attorney General's opinion and what you're hearing from DCH, how you plan on potentially funding that through CMH? What options you have and what roadblocks you're coming up to?
Yeah, thanks, Beth. In the document that was mailed towards the end are some recommendations or possible actions that Northern Lakes should consider. And as Sonny had mentioned, within our budget, there are local funds. Some of those local funds come from our 6 counties. And we're also able to raise local funds through interest because as a capitated organization, we receive advance payments for which we can invest to gain some interest earnings, and we're also able to generate fees for services. So of our about $2 million, $2.1 million of local funds, about $1.7 million of that get committed to matching services, including matching Medicaid dollars. We believe we have about $400,000 of local funds, independent of funds that the county have given us, that we could use to charge against the cost of services provided within our jails. Now, that's a bit risky from a community mental health perspective to be on that tight a margin. But when I spoke with the department about this issue, and again, there's confusion across the entire state as to what's the impact of this Attorney General's opinion, we believe that we can get through a year, for sure, making that type of commitment, and certainly to have greater dialogue about what this means for the future. As I shared in the concept paper, there is legislation proposed in the Senate that would change the Attorney General's opinion, and in the House appropriation language that's still pending to the Joint Conference Committee, there's also language in there that would, in another way, accomplish the same thing. So between now and the 1st of October, perhaps there'll be some greater clarity in that area. Ideally, we would like to be able to continue to use the general fund dollars that we have, albeit that they're shrinking a lot. Right. In terms of the ability to pay for those types of services, because most people here are probably aware that when a person who has Medicaid is incarcerated, they lose Medicaid. So all those services have to be paid through another source of funding. There's some change as well that looks at perhaps a person who had Medicaid prior to incarceration, and if during that incarceration they're admitted to a psychiatric facility, that their Medicaid would be reinstated. That would be great. But that's two birds in a bush at this point as well. So we see it as a moving target. The board will have more discussion at its August meeting, post meetings with all our counties. I've sent correspondence to our 6 county sheriffs as well, hoping to schedule meetings to sort of look at could this type of concept of our using some of our local funds to cover those costs where we can't use general fund services post 10/1/2010 would work to move that forward. The Department of Community Health made it pretty clear that if we use general fund dollars after the 1st of October, they're going to force us to pay those dollars back. That it's illegal to use state funds to provide services that are the county's responsibility. So we're trying to find some options to try. We know that none of our 6 counties have flexible dollars. They're all stretched to the maximum. And probably the last thing anyone wants to do is to try to incur greater cost in an area where, particularly in Grand Traverse County, there's the history of how funding arrangements were achieved.
I think, the County Board of Commissioners, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're not obviously, as you know, interested in paying any more additionally for mental health services in the jail. And we want to continue to receive those and continue to improve upon those. And you understand that, obviously, and trying to work at different ways to leverage your portion of your local dollars to satisfy that. I'm just kind of curious, other CMH and county responses across the state, because in just looking at this, I would think some CMHs would get the Attorney General's opinion and go, oh, great, we can pull more dollars in. Have any CMHs taken that approach across
Yeah.
the state?
Much of this arose out of Marquette County. Because the CMH up there essentially was out of all funds. And they really had no dollars to support that. So they took the position, they were part of the request for the opinion, and once the opinion came, they said, we refuse to provide any services within the jails. And that led to the counties privatizing services within the jails. So the county's not doing anything there at all. I know in Kalamazoo County, they have worked to try to find a way to reduce the cost of inpatient, because when you read that Attorney General's opinion, one of the real challenging pieces of that is not just the services that are provided in the jail proper. It includes the cost of services provided to an inmate in other settings. So if services are provided at a CMH program in the community, or get this, if a person is admitted from the jail into Kalamazoo Psychiatric Hospital, those would be county responsibilities as well. So I think, and the other part of that, Beth, I think, is in some counties, particularly more urban counties, the separation between CMH-funded services and county-provided mental health services were probably a little stronger. I think in more rural areas, there's been more of a collaborative attempt to provide services, where in some of the larger settings, they're kind of their own independent mental health organization. So some of those don't want any changes. I mean, from the CMH side, there are CMHs that are saying the last thing we want to do is have the law change that would allow us to use general fund or expect us to use general fund, because we don't have enough of those dollars to begin with. So why would we want all of a sudden to pick up that responsibility? So I think the dust, or the dust hasn't even started flying on this one yet. I think a lot of people just kind of waited to see how this might play out legislatively.
So this kind of puts CMH between a rock and a hard place, and not, you have to follow the guidelines, and yet you don't want to go back to your counties and say, start paying up, right?
Yes, ma'am. It's kind of a tough spot, It seems lately that the Department of Community Health has found ways to pit CMHs against counties, and you kind of get stuck between local and state issues, and this is an example of that.
So could you talk to me a little bit about the history of the funding with the counties? Obviously, Grand Traverse and Leelanau County were together before Northern Lakes was formed, and we do have the lion's share of the county funding. What is the reason that Grand Traverse and Leelanau County are so much higher? Because if you end up looking at the amount of money we pay, per recipient or per population, we're so much higher.
Yeah. In the concept paper, there's a couple paragraphs that address that, so I would encourage people to go back to look at that. But just to highlight it a bit, one of the misconceptions about local funding is that it's per capita based. I would tell you that there is no rhyme, reason, or logical history of what any county pays from a local match perspective. But there's a couple drivers. Communities that have had a psychiatric hospital historically have had larger demands. So I think if you were to look at county contributions towards local match, there's probably a trend towards a little higher. And of course, we had a psychiatric hospital here for a long time. Certainly counties that have a little bit more economic means, and that's not to say that anybody has much flexibility economically, but communities that had a little greater economic capacity tended to fund programs a little higher, in part because when community mental health programs started, they were all based on a 90-10 match. So the only way that you could develop programs within the community would be if counties had the ability to contribute local funds. So in this community, the identification of those funding sources particularly came from the counties. In other counties, there were other efforts to try to find ways to create local funds. So I think that was another issue. The third real driver, I think, is back in the early 1980s, the state of Michigan went to what's called full management community mental health programs. And prior to that, the county had two mental health line items. They had a line item for community mental health, and they had a line item very similar to your child care fund, so that every year you would pay 10% of the cost of care for persons who were in a state hospital, children, adult, or person with developmental disabilities. When counties allowed community mental health programs to become a full management, they consolidated those allocations into an annual contribution, and from that, the community mental health programs covered the cost of the state hospital services. That figure was based on the prior year utilization of hospitals. So communities that had high residency, either in an adult psychiatric hospital, a children's psychiatric hospital, or a facility for persons with developmental disabilities, had a high base to start from. Grand Traverse, add them together, high base of persons in the hospital, large numbers of people from Grand Traverse in the state hospital. Some of that may be by proximity, some may be because of how services developed, and probably the capacity to support creation of new services. You see wide variances from around the state as to what counties contribute to that.
Greg, wouldn't part of that, I'm not sure of the timing on all this, but wouldn't also part of that be the result of when they closed the state mental hospitals and where those patients located? I mean, I'm assuming, I know from my experience in the UP, a lot of the people ended up in the immediate area of the hospital as opposed out. And so would that have been another thing, it increased demand at the local mental health or not?
Well, I think there's increased demand, but when full management, I think, was 1983, and the closing of the hospital here was 1989.
Okay.
And when the hospital closed in, I think it was 1989, I keep a coffee cup that's their 100-year anniversary, because I always figure if it can close a hospital like that, anything can happen, right, in mental health. There were not many people in the hospital at that point in time. So I don't think that's the primary driver, but there's absolutely no doubt that communities that had state hospitals had a higher density of persons with mental health issues than those that didn't.
Well, obviously, this will be an ongoing discussion, and when Beth mentions the community mental health being between a rock and a hard place, Grand Traverse County is there also.
Yeah.
We contribute $682,000 a year to Great Lakes Community Mental Health. That's a lot of money out of our general fund budget. It's always interesting to me when we have the conversation about the fact that there was a mental hospital here. The way I see it, we're in our third generation after the closing of that
Okay.
hospital. Why are we still penalized because of the fact that that hospital was here? It's an ongoing thing, and obviously, we're not going to get it all settled out this morning. There's a lot of legal issues to be dealt with, and obviously, there's financial issues to be dealt with.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the questions and taking the time. I apologize I know you have a busy agenda. The one comment I would make is that we include the information about cost and services in your packet, in part to help you look at what we would refer to as a return on investment. There's absolutely no doubt that $682,000 is a tremendous amount of money. That $682,000, though, leveraged over $19 million of services for persons from Grand Traverse County, which I think is tremendously important as well. And, I can tell you that I feel tremendous responsibility and pressure every day to do the best job that I can to ensure that those dollars are used wisely and they're producing the outcomes for persons that you guys want us to have. So thank you very much for letting us extend a little bit.
So would that be an indication of the emails I get from like 5:30 a.m. from you?
Yeah, I've been to work for a couple hours probably by then.
I just wanted to mention Pat was new on the CMH board the same time I was, and was appointed obviously by Grand Traverse County, and I think you've enjoyed it.
I have.
He's done a great job.
There's one thing, when I was appointed to this board, Sonny, you asked me the same question about the jail. I mean, that was one of the things you said to me. And, I don't know if I really, even to this day, know what your real concerns are. And so as we do these surveys, I would really appreciate it, these kind of concerns. I'd like to see you write those down in those surveys so we as a board can look at those and talk about them. Because like I say, I'm really not real sure what your concerns are, and I'd really like to address them as a board member.
All right.
So I'd appreciate that, really.
There?
Greg, how many staff do you have at this location here?
Here, less than we did last year. We probably have, I'm going to take a little guess here, about 70, 65 to 70.
And what are the hours of their work?
Yeah. We have our emergency services team and our ACT teams have 24/7 availability. Traditional office hours are 8 to 5. We do some evening work with groups and programs. But traditionally, this is our administrative office as well. So 8 to 5, about 70 persons, with some persons who work there having 24/7 on-call responsibility. We don't run any type of residential program or anything out of the Hall Street location. We also have a clubhouse program at Hall Street. We'd love to have people come by to look at our facilities sometime. That'd be great.
But basically, after 5 o'clock, you don't have anybody on duties, if you will?
On call?
No, on duty, physically there.
No, correct. Other than, there'll be some groups going on, or like Traverse House runs programs a couple nights a week and on Saturday. But generally, the building isn't providing services at that time. other than some of us that are there early and late, doing administrative types of stuff.
I find that interesting because it's as if the need for mental health assistance stops at 5 and nobody needs it on weekends.
Yeah.
I just wonder, the 24/7 I understand, but when you're on the street or somebody needs help, that wait a lot of times is intolerable.
Absolutely.
And I would like to see community mental health look at that issue. I have to agree with Sonny, you know. I spent a lot of years on the streets here as a police officer, and there's nothing worse than being on the bricks, somebody obviously in need, and it just takes a lot of time.
One of the things we've had some discussion about is could we actually do a crisis setting with 24/7 staffed persons to be a little bit more responsive to the type of issue you're raising versus having to reach people via a pager or cell phone. Because I think you're right, timeliness is everything in some of these.
Your comments on closing of the hospital, what they in essence did, in my opinion, and what I saw, was they literally turned the people out in the streets of Traverse City. The violently ill ones that had violent tendencies, they transferred to other hospitals. But the majority of those, when I hired on, there was like 3,050 patients in that hospital.
Yeah.
And the majority of them ended up on the streets here eventually. And I have to wonder, another comment you made is it's the number of people in the community is the reason our cost is so high. In some of the stuff you've handed out here, Wexford had almost half of the people that we did, and yet they pay like 76 and we're paying 682. That's really a great disparity.
Yeah, you know, when we went through the merger discussions back in 2002, that was a key issue in the decisions for the 6 counties to come together looking at county match issues. And, you know, my belief is it's always better just to have information available than to have those discussions. I can tell you, having been part of the CMH program that served Wexford County at the time of the full management, we had very, very few people in state hospitals, which had great financial advantages in terms of that time of the transition to a full management board. But I guess I should probably let you get on with your agenda. I'm more than willing to come back at any time.
You know, and I think,
These
you
are
know, it's
great questions, Larry. I
important to
really
note,
appreciate
you know,
that.
this is an ongoing discussion. And Dennis,
Just,
did you have
Greg, I
something?
wanted to mention, it sounds like you guys have done a lot of thinking out of the box in terms of how we might provide these services in the jail. And I don't know that this holds any potential, but, you know, with a couple of medical agencies through the state, you know, we do one of these with our pavilions and with Munson, actually. We do one of these pass-through programs where we can give extra money to the agency, and the agency can then match that money, and then we figure out a creative way to return that money at some time in the future. And so all I'm saying is, as you look at those options, don't disregard that possibility. If there's a way we could figure out, you know, to temporarily increase that appropriation and then garner federal and state money to support it and then bring it back to the community. So when we talk, you know, we should have everything open. Okay.
Now, there's still going to be future discussions with the sheriff's department, the Captain Hall and so forth regarding the jail services, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think what's going to happen, we're not quite sure about that, but it appears that probably what we'll do, Greg, is we'll ask you to meet with Grand Traverse County and we may, it looks like we're going to be asked to represent the other 5 in the discussions on how jail services are provided. So we're doing some surveying of the other jails now to kind of make sure we understand who's getting what kind of services, so we have a good idea, because it doesn't look like services match up from county to county, different, and I'm guessing what you're trying to do is tailor to their needs, and so we want to try to have that understanding. But it looks like what they're going to do is ask us to kind of maybe take the lead on this, so I know Nate's going to call you to get a meeting set up real soon.
Reminder for all of the commissioners to fill out their survey forms, and so we can get those to Greg, please.
Yeah, and remember, last year I stood over you.
I know you did.
It didn't take long for me to fill mine out either time, so.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, and
Okay,
I
thank
apologize to the other persons in the
Well,
room
it's-
for extending your agenda.
It's important discussion because it is a significant amount of money that we spend of Grand Traverse County funds. So, Area Agency on Aging.
You don't have to stop.
My name is Greg Piaskowski, and unlike Greg Paphos, I don't apologize for anything. And I don't know if you have a copy of our annual report. I don't know if we sent it to you. know
I got mine
Christine
yesterday
has
at Commission
one
on
from
Aging.
Yesterday.
It's in our packet.
Is it in the packet? Okay. The cover of the annual report is a letter from me, and I am retiring in 57 days, so
Wow.
this is my last annual report that I'll work on. And kind of a retrospective of what we've done over the past are covered in those 5 bullet points. It's not an inclusive list. But as I look back at my years of service, the first thing that comes to mind is the people that served on our board and the people I worked with. From Grand Traverse County, our board leadership came from, there were three chairpersons or presidents, Mike Bertram, Mike Parrish, and Margaret Underwood, who served on our board. And then the first board member from Grand Traverse County was County Commissioner Frank Oldages, goes back a long way. And then we had Cease Edgecombe, who was just an interesting man, a magician. And he had the place over, I guess he owned the building on the corner of Front and Cass. And his office was upstairs. He had a little magic shop up there. And then we had Roger Griner, Jay Hooper, Martha Smith, Virginia, and Larry served on our board for a couple of years, I think. And since you turned over the responsibility of the COA, we've had Paul Schultz, Gene Vaughn, and currently Jim Pasco. And the board has provisions for at-large members, and we've had Hunts Martinoff, who's since passed, Dr. James Gross, and currently Randy Clausen, who is applying to be on the state commission, so may be a good benefit for our region. I apologize that I don't have any supplementary information, but I gave the deputy clerk copies of some county breakouts, and she has all 10 counties included in that as Grand Traverse County. But the county received $1.7 million from us during fiscal year 2009, and that's about 25% of our funding. And the county has about 20.45% of the senior population, so there were a few counties that were on the lower side, and those tend to be like Emmett County, a little bit further away, Charlotte County, I think. Well, Charlotte County, I think, was even. Anyway, those counties a little bit further away. So that's the funding picture. Approximately 10 providers, including the Commission on Aging, and included in that 1.7 million is the nutrition numbers that we fund Northwest Michigan Human Services Community, or Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency for the nutrition program. And so it's based on a number of meals they served in Grand Traverse County is included in that $1.7 million. And it's, like I said, gone to approximately 10, 11, 12 providers. I don't know. I think they're listed on on the sheets I gave to the deputy clerk. So if you want to look at those, you can feel free to look at what you have. Okay. I don't know which one is looking at.
I'll
Two of
make sure
them.
that these
Yeah, you
copies
got it
get to
covered.
Dennis, so as they can be put in everyone's mailbox,
We'll do
because
that.
there's not copies here for everyone this morning, so.
So anyway, that's it, and there's numbers on the inside for 2009, and on the back is a breakdown of what our accomplishments were, what we figured they were. And one of the things, the first two items, nursing facility transition and residential services, are related. And one of the things we have worked on over the past couple of years is getting people out of nursing homes back in the community. And that's at a large savings to Medicaid. Greg talked a little bit about Medicaid. And I think there's two providers in the area, and Greg's office is one of the providers of some of this nursing facility transition activity along with us. But I think we're a little bit busier than his staff is. We've spent a lot with caregiver services. We have two programs that we've worked with the state office on, the Savvy Caregiver. We have people training caregivers in what's called the T-Care program, and it's an assessment that focuses on the caregiver. So those are two things we're doing for caregivers. Bob Schluter has been appointed as my replacement. Bob's in the back of the room. And he's worked real closely with the Northwest Michigan Transportation Alliance, NMTA, and working on transportation issues in primarily right now Grand Traverse County, with hopes of expanding into the other 9 counties. Is it just Grand Traverse, or is it Grand Traverse, Leland? Okay. And working real close with the disability community, with Jim Moore's operation, Disability Network, Northern Michigan. And then we have a real active Medicare, Medicaid assistance program, and that helps people with insurance issues. And we've had volunteers at the senior center. And Georgia, have you had people trained for MAP? I don't remember. No? Okay. But I think the senior center has been the primary focus, and the person we had stationed there has since resigned as a volunteer, right? So right now, it's just what the volunteers we have at our office. We're looking at, and we have someone at the Social Security office too. And finally, the agency sponsors a Senior Empowerment Day, which will be held the end of September. This year will be in Lake City. We're going to try to move it around. We have a committee from the 10-county area working on this, and so that'll move to the Lake City area. With that, I thank you for your support in the past and for sending us some really, really, really good people that they are, like I said, are emblazoned in my memory and always will be, and people who helped us through some really tough times. And I look at Mike Bertram and Cease Edgecombe as being really, really critical in supporting the agency. So thank you. And unless you have any questions,
Any questions for Greg?
I just want to wish you a happy retirement and try to watch the ladder diving.
Okay, yeah, no more ladder diving, yeah. Thank you, Christine.
Okay, that brings us to the sheriff's office, who has a discussion out in the hallway, apparently.
Who's having a discussion without the county board.
The sheriff's office is doing a pre-presentation
Yes, a
conference in the hallway, so,
We're actually talking about mental health.
well, yeah. That discussion will take longer than we have this morning, so, good morning, Nate.
Good morning.
Morning, Tom.
Nate Elger, Sheriff's Office.
Tom Bensley, Grand Traverse County Sheriff.
Gentlemen, we
Wanna
have
talk about
three
snowmobiles
items.
first, or
We
you
have
wanna
three
talk-
items this morning, so let's talk about the agenda items, and then we'll talk about the one that was brought forward.
The first item before you today is a simple movement of FTEs from the 312 line, or 312 fund, which is the Investigative Services Division, to the Road Patrol. The detectives have been moved physically from the Detective Bureau into the Road Patrol, and because by contract they get a 4% incentive pay, so to speak, on their wages, we would like to move it in the Road Patrol so they can be accounted for appropriately.
This is in result of the
School
decision
funding.
of the school
Liaison
board.
officers.
Yes.
Commissioner Fleece.
I would move that we authorize the Sheriff's Department to move 4 FTEs from Investigative Services Division to the Field Services Division.
I'll support.
Motion by Fleece, supported by Max Bauer, to approve the moving of officers from the school liaisons positions to the Road Patrol. Further discussion? Ross?
I just had a question. You mentioned the 4% incentive.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, by contract, 2 contracts ago, well, historically, the detectives have always gotten an incentive pay for being a detective. So when they were assigned from the Road Patrol to the Detective Bureau, they got, it was $750 when I was in the Detective Bureau. That was to account for the loss of overtime. Historically speaking, detectives, when they moved from the Road Patrol to the DB, lost overtime. And because it's an assignment, not a promotion, there is no pay increase that went with it. And the Sheriff's Department has a belief that we should keep it as an assignment, and because of that, we've negotiated a 4% increase in pay over and above top deputy for detectives assigned to the Detective Bureau.
So it's a temporary stipend while they're in the detective position. When they're no
Okay,
longer
so-
assigned as a detective, they go back to being a
It will save
deputy.
us 4%.
That's correct.
So they're losing the 4% by moving back to the road patrol?
That is correct.
That's what wasn't clear to me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And it is historically was designed to cover the loss of overtime, because they are removed from the equalization list that the deputies have.
Okay.
Further questions? We have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
I'm going to let Sheriff Bensley handle the second item.
Oates.
As you know, we applied for and received a grant from the Department of Natural Resources and Environment to purchase boats for the Sheriff's Office Marine Safety Section. We received a grant of $45,000 with zero county match from the state for the purchase of boats. There were a couple of options there. Number one, we could take $45,000 and purchase whatever we could with that. Or if we wanted to put in additional county money, typically the state grant for marine safety is 75-25. If we were able to come up with the 25%, we could purchase as many boats as we could out of that. At this point, we didn't ask for any additional money from the county. We have, at this point, decided just to use the 100% funding, which is $45,000. So we got some price, prior to applying for the grant, we got some price quotes, figured out about how much we would need to purchase the boats, and applied for, received the grant, and then sent out bids for the boats. And I think you've bid requests for the boats, motors, and trailers, and I think you have those. We received bids from 3 companies, Traverse Bay Marine in Traverse City, Long Lake Marina in Interlaken, and Camp & Cruise in Marne, Michigan, which is northwest of Grand Rapids. By looking at the 3 quotes, the quotes for the boat from Traverse Bay Marine was $41,325. The bid from Long Lake Marina was $23,927. And Camp and Cruise submitted 3 bids, and the lowest one was $21,403. The other 2 were $23,253 and $23,376. After we received the bids back, obviously, we looked at the costs. We also looked at the boats, and at this point, we would be recommending that we purchase 2 boats, 2 motors, and 2 trailers from Camp and Cruise in Marne, Michigan. The boat that they bid, which was a Crestliner with an Evinrude motor and Yacht Club trailer, seems to fit our needs the best. On a scale of 1 to 10, from what we have right now, and the boats that we are replacing, at least at this point, are 12 years old. And on a scale of 1 to 10, the boats that we hope to purchase, as far as being the identical boat, which have worked very well, is about a 9. So over 12 years, we came very close to replacing exactly what we have. And we're recommending the Crestliners because, number one, because of that reason. It's an aluminum hull, and it's a welded aluminum hull. We've had 6 or 7 Crestliner boats, all with welded aluminum hulls, and they hold up very well. It has a carpeted floor. That's good in the wintertime or cold weather. It doesn't. It's not quite as slippery. Obviously, it has the best price. The manufacturer will make these boats for us, and they do have to be manufactured because they're not sitting on a lot. It's not like a used car lot or a new car lot where you have many cars and stuff to choose from. They will make them, they will leave off decals, they will leave off certain items that we don't need. So basically, it will be plain, there will be no decals on the side, no fancy colors, it'll be a single uniform color. With the bid price of $21,403, that total is $42,806. And our award was $45,000. So this is well under that amount. What we would like to do is, with that extra money, is upgrade things just a little bit. And the first thing would be to increase the transom height and the motor length by 5 inches. Right now, a lot of the boats that are manufactured have low transom, and if you happen to be in a heavy sea or are backing up, water can come over the transom. So we want to spend an extra $350 per boat to increase that transom depth. We could also get a stainless steel prop versus an aluminum, which are much sturdier. It saves a lot of time repairing or replacing the aluminum props. And then in all of these bids, the trailers that were bid is a basic trailer enough to handle the boat and motor. We would like to get, and these were bunk trailers. Typically when people make bids, they bid just enough so hopefully they can get the bid. We'd like to get a little heavier duty trailer with that. And still be, the total price would be less than $45,000. So there's, actually we have a couple hundred, 300 some dollars or $294 left over that we will not use. So our request would be that we get approval to purchase the 2 Crestliner boats, motors, and trailers from Camp and Cruise.
Motion to approve Camp and...
Motion by Friend,
Support.
supported by
You didn't let me
Thomas.
finish.
Further discussion?
Not to...
I'd like to see us, I'd like the bid to, or the motion to include cost not to exceed $45,000 at the sheriff's.
And that's exactly what I was going to say if you didn't
Sheriff's
cut me off. If you actually let me make the motion.
You said so moved, so we're moving on. Okay, Chris?
Sheriff, you mentioned that your present boat is 12 years old, and did you look at longevity? Because, and I understand that a Boston Whaler is expensive, $41,282, but you won't have to replace it in 10 years. You won't have to replace it in 20 years. A Boston Whaler, I know people that have got Boston Whalers that are 30 and 40 years old. I mean, those things are there.
Well, we're replacing or getting 2 new boats
I understand that.
because we go to several different lakes. Now, the cost of one Boston Whaler was $41,000.
I know.
That means the county would have to come up with roughly $40,000 for the second boat.
Well, I know, I don't want to.
Are you
You're
suggesting
exactly
they
right.
purchase one boat?
They're great boats.
But I mean,
And we looked at that. We looked at that boat. And when the boat
But you won't.
basically cost twice as much as the other.
I understand that, but in 12 years, you won't be back replacing a Boston Whaler, and that's why I'm asking the question.
Dickie?
A Whaler's a good boat, but it's not that much better. And to say one is gonna last twice as long as,
Well, a few other.
I can't go
It's not
along
as
with that.
deep either.
Crestliner's a good boat.
It's a very good boat. They're small. These are a little bit larger boats. They're heavier. This particular bid includes a 4-stroke motor, which is good motors, but they're heavier. And the ones we have work very well. They have for 12 years. We in 1997, I think, we purchased 3 identical boats. A couple years ago, they sold one of them. This will be replacing, or we'll get 2 new ones, and we're already thinking somehow we might be able to get a 3rd one, just waiting towards the end of the year here, bring that fleet back up.
Are you going to sell the 2 boats that you're replacing?
We haven't decided that yet. We're thinking at least one, and hopefully keep the best one, but if we sell, using these prices, if we were to sell 2 of them, rough estimate is we would get $6,000. If we could find 16,000 or so, we'd be able to buy a 3rd brand new boat. So we upgrade everything at one time.
Well, if you, maybe the state will give you the 75% reimbursement for the 3rd boat.
Well, we'll definitely be asking for that in the budget request for next year.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. And if granted, that's a 75-25 match. So we just don't have an extra 16,000 at this point this year to make that 3rd purchase. Maybe at the end of the year, something might happen. I don't know. But
Okay.
One of the things we have to remember is the welded aluminum hulls are very important when you're trailering these boats. The vibration of hauling them up and down the road just rattles rivets loose, and then we also put ourselves in a situation where we sometimes use these boats in float ice, and that is very, very hard on them. A few years ago on Long Lake, we pretty much destroyed one boat. I spent a sizable part of a day and a half re-riveting it. It would just basically destroyed that boat. So, we have a motion made and seconded to approve the purchase of 2 boats not to exceed $45,000. Is there any further discussion?
Chris, I'd just like you to know that my husband tries to use the same argument on the Boston Whaler at home, and I don't
It didn't work there either, did it?
I love it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
As for the snowmobile, that is an 85-15% match, and due to temporary brain incapacity, if you divide that number by 85 and 100, you get 2 different numbers. So, excuse me, I divided that by 100%, just an error, instead of 85%, so that upped the match by a couple $100, I believe.
And you
why
have that match?
Do we
You
have
that
it?
much
Well, I was
available?
hoping that we could get that from you.
Oh, is that what it was? You're joking, right?
I am joking. Yeah, we have it.
You've been through a couple of days of budget meetings.
What's happened to the price of snowmobiles? My first one was out the door, brand new for $300.
Well, now they have seats, Dick, and they don't have dogs in front of them.
This one didn't need it.
It's interesting. I found it interesting that Spicer's still quoting you a 2007 snowmobile, brand new, sitting on the floor.
The price is still
What
not
does that
there.
tell you? What does that tell you about the snowmobile market over the last few years? They still got $2007 machines, but they really didn't discount that
No, not
2007 machine, considering everything taken into
You
consideration.
set yourself up for that.
You know,
pretty good.
Commissioner Thomas, there was a significant discussion yesterday on a local talk show that talked about the price of jukebox songs being a dime. And I personally don't ever remember that. Maybe somebody else does, but they're well over $1 now.
We're full of good humor this morning, aren't we?
I can remember when a draft beer was a dime. Three for a quarter.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
we have a motion to approve the recommendation to purchase the snowmobile from Lake and Trail Power Sports in an amount of $10,800.
I'll make the motion.
And I'll second.
We have a motion by Max Bauer, supported by Richardson. Further discussion? Obviously, my only question is, have we identified operational costs for this program?
In next year's budget, which we just submitted our budget request to the DNR, and this is an 15 grant for equipment and for operations. Without looking at the sheet, I think to operate the program, the snowmobile program next year, 3 days a week from middle of December to the end of February, depending on the snow, that's always kind of up in the air. I think the county's cost is $1,600 or something like that.
Okay.
And that's just operational. That's not the snowmobile trip, so.
I understand, but we just, this is a program that we've kind of let go a little bit over the last few years, and, we just need to make sure that we've identified the costs of providing the personnel and the operationals in that too, because we don't want to purchase a machine and then not be able to operate it.
Right. No, roughly that's the cost without looking at it. The overall budget is about $10,000, so our cost is 15% of that. And the response last year from the public that I received through the snowmobile officers who were out was they were really, really happy to see snowmobile officers out on patrol.
Further discussion? We have a motion made and seconded to approve the purchase. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Sheriff, I wanted to say something to you and to the undersheriff. I attended Corporal Miller's funeral last week, and I noticed that Grand Traverse County Sheriff's deputies were present, and I just wanted to say thank you. I know that the services were threatened by protesters. I thought that your staff did an outstanding job. I thought the state police did an outstanding job. The Benzie Sheriff Department and the city police. And I just wanted to say thank you.
We won't take credit for that. We'll give the credit to a few officers at our office who kind of spearheaded some of the arrangements, in particular Deputy Stroh, who was freshly back from service in the U.S. Marines. And there were other officers at our department who attended because they were Marines. Captain Meacham's son is in the Marine Reserve program, and they wanted to be there. We said go ahead. So, thank you very much.
Anything else for the sheriff?
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any unfinished business this morning? New business, we have some preliminary budget discussions.
Yeah, this is just going to be brief. I just wanted to give you an update on where we're at. We have, I think, now had we've got most of the budgets in, many of which are balanced according to the directions that they were given. We have a few that we're still working on. We've had budget meetings with, I think, 7 departments so far, and all 7 of those are now balanced based on the lower numbers. So we have a long way to go. We've been making really good progress. Most all of the departments have been real cooperative in trying to come up with the numbers. Now, I don't want that to give you any indication that somehow this is going to be okay. You know, they're balancing the budgets, but the impacts are going to be significant. But so far, it's going well. We've met with the sheriff a couple times now, and in fact, I think the budget numbers came in yesterday, so we're just kind of going over those again, and we'll be back and forth a few more times, I'm sure, but things are going fairly well. We are, today, I think a letter will go out to all the employees, kind of explaining the situation that the board is in terms of when they see things like planning positions being approved, and employees are wondering how we can cut jobs and approve new positions. I've done a letter on that. You'll all get a copy of that today. And I've been meeting with departments that requested it. I met with the department heads Tuesday, and we talked this over, and I offered to meet with any of the staffs that need to meet or that would have questions about the budget, that would be glad to do that. Jen Seaman, who just walked in, our HR director, has been meeting with staff as well. Yesterday, there was a meeting with the facilities department, which is looking at potentially cutting 10 positions out of, I think, 30 or 35. And they met with the staff yesterday. I had met with the staff, I think, last Thursday or Friday, to talk with the staff and explain that to them and kind of what the implications of this are. So we've been meeting with the employees as they request it, with the departments as they request it, to try to give them as much information as we can. And it's an interesting process because we're trying not to unnecessarily alarm employees, because this obviously places a lot of stress on employees when they don't know. But we didn't want to be in a situation where when we hand you the budget on August 18th, the headline on the 19th is, 30 employees laid off and they didn't know anything about it. So we're trying to inform them, but we're also telling them this is all subject to board discretion when it gets to the board, and we don't know how the board will review these, and there is some discretionary money that may be put back into some of these programs. So it's kind of a delicate balancing act that we're going through with the employees and the departments as we develop the budget. But I would say things generally are going well. We will intend to have it to you on the 18th, and it will be balanced. There are a couple things that have been coming up lately that I'm just going to kind of throw out to you so you're aware of it. There have been a couple of discussions about the potential to have furlough days. I mean, some of the employees are talking now about, well, could the board do furlough days instead of laying all these people off? There's been some discussion, and we always, our answer to those questions are, that's really a union issue that you should talk with your union about. That's not something that we will discuss with you. It has to be a union agreement. We don't have the ability in all cases to do those things. There have been discussions about reducing the hours of operations of the county buildings down to like 7.5 hours a day, or maybe being open 8:30 to 5 instead of 8 to 5, and reducing people's pay as a result of that. One thing that we're working on right now is, with Jen and I and Dean are working on, is the possibility of setting up a severance program. And we're trying to be real careful with this because, we did a lot of early retirements back in the day, and it cost us dearly. We're talking about something a little bit different. Some of our departments have individuals who are eligible to retire and might be willing to. And they're saying if we could give them a little severance. Now, in the past, what we did is we said, we're going to bump your retirement by 2% a year for 3 years or something like that costs us forever. This is more in the case of we're going to give you some money, a small amount of money to leave now as an incentive for you to retire and leave. And we're telling the departments, or the departments are saying, and we want to make this part of our cut and leave that position open, eliminate the position. So that's the key, eliminating the position, not refilling it. And so there's some of that. So we are working on that. We don't know where we're going to go with it yet, but some of the departments have offered that as a way to save money in their budgets. And, you know, you may see us provide you with a proposal to have an open window of a severance package kind of thing, you know, to have people leave early, retire or leave. We don't know whether we're going to recommend that or not, but it's kind of interesting because a couple of the budgets have made that as their proposal to cut. You know, and you know, in one case it saves almost $160,000 with a couple of individuals going. And so, you know, it's something we have to take a serious look at. And we don't know whether it's a couple people in the county or it's 5 people in the county. You know, we don't think it's a whole lot. Actually, what Jen is doing now is going through the years of service and age of our employees, so we could see even what part of the population might be eligible for something like that. So those are some of the things that are coming up now. When we bring you the budget, as I said to you, it will be balanced. We hope to bring you a list of other options, you know, for you to consider, other ways if you decide to raise it up above the level that it's going to be budgeted at, which is no fund balance, nothing else. But, you know, we're going to do things, you know, we'll provide you with numbers. We'll tell you that if you take the non-24-hour operation departments and you reduce their hours to 7.5 instead of 8, the ones you can, that saves you $177,000 a year. We're going to tell you if you have a 1 furlough day, it'll save you this much money in a year. You know, we'll provide you some of those things. There will be some areas there where you can look at where you will have some discretion to make choices. You know, one option might be instead of putting the $880,000 a year into the CIP fund, you might only put $600,000 in the CIP fund, make the road payment and put a little more money in there. Those kinds of things we're going to be looking at. We won't have answers on taxes. We won't know that till the end of September. That's when the CPI is established. And so we won't know what that final number looks like, but we will provide you with the latest information we have on CPI to tell you what the trend looks like in terms of tax increase, if any. You know, some of the departments we will be recommending they be treated a little bit differently. For example, the building code department, we're going to be looking at additional layoffs. But it's an enterprise fund, and it's all established to live off the revenues it generates. And so, you know, we're going to look at that. That's a fund, for example, where we haven't increased fees since 2006 because of the economy. And so you might see a combination of layoffs and a recommendation to do a small, modest fee increase and, you know, several other things. And in many departments, you will see that, a recommendation to change revenue in one or more ways and adjust expenses down as well. It'll be real interesting, and I think and a rewarding process for us all. You know, one thing you'll hear from the sheriff, for example, is every cut you make to me impacts district court, because the revenues he collects with his road patrol go to district court. He doesn't keep them; they go to district court. So it impacts a different department. And you know, this premise we made is revenues you generate, but in fact those revenues get credited other places, don't get credited to him. So it's going to be a real interesting discussion, I think, but I think one that's worthwhile. I think, I don't know if Katie's talked with you yet, but we were looking at I think it was the 8th and the 9th. That Thursday, Friday for budget hearings with the departments. But, you know, frankly, I'm convinced that's not going to be enough time. You know, I mean, the sheriff told me he needs 6 hours. And Nate told me he's got 2,000 slides he wants to share with you, his budget needs. So I just, you know, I mean, these departments are not going to want 15 minutes, you know, and I'm thinking we're going to need another day or two. So next week, I'm going to bring you a calendar, and we're going to maybe sit down and try to hammer out a couple more days, because I think we may need it this year above all. So that's kind of what I wanted to just kind of give you an update on and tell you where we're at. Are there any questions? Is there anything you'd like to know? Yes.
Dennis, I noticed on the bottom of the list of how the departments are supposedly going to be cut, you do not have pay increases built into that budget. That concerns me.
Well, no, yes, those numbers are, what I told everybody when I met with the departments is, this is how much you have to cut, but really pay attention to the far right column. That's your budget number for 2011, okay? And then we handed them out the budgets with the contracted pay increases in them.
Okay.
So, and it was confusing, because, those are not all set yet. So in some cases, we had to do estimates. So in effect, we said, cut $50,000 and your budget is $250. But really, what they had to cut was maybe $60 because of the pay increases that are contractually obligated. So as we go through this with them, they all have those numbers and they're aware of them. Larry?
Just to let everyone know, Dick and I have met multiple times with Katie and Dean and myself. We think we have the suggested reductions for our line item for the Board of Commissioners to meet the goal that we have set for all the other departments in terms of the reduction percentage. And so we're just going to take a final quick look at them after today's meeting, and then we plan on having that in the packet for the Resource Administrative Committee for next Wednesday. And that packet will be out, I think, either Thursday or Friday of this week, so you'll have plenty of time. What we tried to do is we outlined what the 010 budget was for the commissioners, and we put it in detailed form. And then we made the suggested reductions on the 011 side. And there was a narrative that we're trying to put together, kind of outlining the substance of the reductions that we're suggesting. But again, it's going to be a dialogue again among all the commissioners about trying to meet that goal that we have set. So just want to let you know what's coming.
And please, commissioners, if there are budget issues you'd like to talk about, please feel free to call Dean or I. We'd love to talk to you about them. If there are other things you'd like us to look at, in terms of other ideas you have to reduce costs down, please let us know. We'll work out the analysis of that and include that in the information we try to provide you on the 18th. And certainly, if we don't have it all done, we'll definitely get it to you before you meet with the department so that you have some sense of those other options as well. Beth?
I have a question for you. I just want to kind of validate what I'm foreseeing the process being in my mind. So, the departments have gone through and made their recommendations for their cuts. They'll be proposing that to the Board of Commissioners.
Yep.
Hopefully, that'll be like an informational type of meeting where we can gain information on what they're suggesting. Maybe not necessarily making any decisions at that point until we hear from all the departments, is what I'm thinking. At that point, then, will that get turned back over to you for your and Dean's recommendations, then to come back to the Board of Commissioners?
Well, the way we envisioned it was the departments will provide Dean and I with budgets that will be balanced under those guidelines you gave us. And we will put that into the budget that we recommend to you based on the direction you've given us. Then you will meet with the departments. I've asked each department to provide a narrative along with their budget that highlights the reductions they had to make in order to meet your goal. Okay? And they will each do that. I would anticipate then you would meet with them and have a discussion with them about the impacts that those reductions are going to have on their program operations. I would hope we don't make any decisions at that time. I think that's not going to be very fruitful because you're going to be inundated with what I think will be very valid concerns about impacts on programs.
Sure.
I hope we take that time to just get all the questions answered, to really understand the impacts. Then we'll have a series of deliberations that you would have. We had not planned on, but if the board tells us, go back and decide how to spend the $750,000, for example.
Yeah, that's what I was
We would
thinking.
do that if you want us to. That's up to the board. I don't know if the board will feel comfortable with that, but we could certainly provide you with recommendations on that. We are going to provide you with some criteria that we think are important for you to consider in the allocation of that $750,000. For example, we think you have to we would like to see you give some credit for departments who have made an effort to reduce over the last 3 or 4 years. Several of the departments have come in and said, look, I gave up 2 positions last year. I don't really have that much more to give up. I think we're going to ask you to give some discretion to departments that may have not been fairly assessed in the allocation that we put together. And I don't know, Commissioner, if you were here, but the example that I used was, the facilities. The sheriff has an $11 million budget, and he had to cut $1 million. The facilities have a $3 million budget, and they have to cut $980,000 because all the utilities and everything is in there. So we're going to ask you to do some of that and ask you to, we'll give you some criteria that we think are important, but of course it'll be your decision. One thing I mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago, and I would still encourage you to consider doing this, I think it might be useful before you meet with the departments to have a meeting of commissioners to discuss kind of what you think your ultimate position will be on budget. And the reason I say this, I've had a couple commissioners come to me and say, well, different things, but, for example, I'm interested in using some fund balance, okay? But what I'd like to do is figure out how much fund balance we have. I think this was Commissioner Inman. How much fund balance is available to keep us above our level, and then I'd like it split over 2 years, because this isn't going to improve for 2 years, and then allocate that percentage. A creative idea, I thought it was a good one. And what I'm saying is, if there is feelings among the commissioners, I think even Commissioner Maxbauer, you said at the last meeting when you did your presentation, I'm not necessarily opposed to using some fund balance. And then there's the issue of how we'll handle capital improvements. And so what I'm suggesting is, it would be good for the commissioners, before you meet with the departments, to say, okay, we have $750,000 we can put back. Is that the number we want to use? Is there a target number we're going to have? We'll consider a furlough day, we'll consider this, we'll consider that. It would be nice to know when you go in that you have $1 million that you're going to work with, or $800,000 or $750,000. And as you listen to these departments and you make your notes, it'll be easier for you to start adding up where you can go. The other way, of course, is just to prioritize them as you hear them, and then kind of, figure out what you want to do. I hope we don't get to a point where we have to sit there and spend days, at the end, arguing about how much money we're going to put back. I'd rather see you get a target number and then build your budget back to that target number, if in fact there is a number above the 750. But that'll be up to you.
Well, dang it, you answered my second question.
Okay, good.
Without even me asking it, because that's what I was going to ask you, is we haven't really made the financial decisions of whether we're going to sit at 18% or whether we're going to sit at 20%, whether we're going to tap into that $880,000 into the CIP, and if the $750,000 that we'll be putting back into the budget is the final number, or is it more like $1.1 million?
Right.
And I think that you need to know that almost before we do have those meetings. So, and part of the first question, then, just to clarify, whatever that amount ends up being, $750,000, $900,000, $1 million, you and Dean would be open to, after we hear from the department heads, going back and identifying some suggestions based on your criteria, knowing that we'll probably accept some and change some?
Absolutely. If the board wants us to do that, we'd be more than happy to do that. Yes, definitely. So, I just think, go ahead, Commissioners.
Dennis, and you are looking where we might be able to contract services so that
Yep. I think you're going to see...
we don't necessarily lose service to the community,
You are going to see...
but we save money.
I know we're going to see at least one, potentially two, maybe three recommendations where there will be, where we're going to look at contracting services.
Okay.
Yeah. Now,
I just think it's important. I just think it's important to have that discussion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where there is opportunity.
Now, I'm sure there are other places that we have opportunity, that we could increase our opportunity. But in our judgment, what we're going to give you is what we believe is the practical things that we can do to try to increase contracting. And then the other thing I do want to say about that, because I think there's a misnomer about this idea that the government in Grand Traverse County, for example, that we do everything with employees. If time allows, well, we'll make time. I'm going to provide you with a list of all the contract services that we do. You'll be amazed at how much we currently contract out. We contract lots and lots of things out that you wouldn't even imagine we contract out, that we don't do with employees because it's cheaper to do contracting out.
Okay.
Commissioner?
I would just want to say that, we do so much for job creation, for trying to preserve jobs in Grand Traverse County, and I, for one, am not really interested in just cutting positions just for the sake of saving maybe a little money when the services are needed. If we have an employee doing the jobs and doing a good job, I think we need to look at trying to preserve as many of those positions as we can. I understand that we're in a budget fix, but just to, willfully privatize, I don't think is necessarily the right approach. Just a personal opinion.
So that meeting that you mentioned, I think that would be important to have to get to that final number. When do you propose having that
Well,
conversation?
I don't know that the board wanted to do that. I suggested a couple weeks ago, but if you want to do it, we could do it at RMA. Actually, that'll be the day that you'll get the budget from us. Excuse me, Ways and Means. That'll be the day you get the budget from us, and if that agenda's not long, we could try to carve an hour, or we could have a special meeting if you prefer. But we would provide you with some, with some options there, and then you could talk about those things.
Yeah, I think, at least from my perspective, first and foremost, I want to thank Dean and Dennis for all the effort, and our department heads for their efforts.
yeah.
Because this has not been an easy process, and we're doing a lot of thinking outside the box, trying to look at a lot of different things. I think as far as the meeting that we're talking about the number, I think the best way to have that discussion is to see the budget that's presented and a list of options, and then have the discussion. Because I think without having those real numbers and the options that you've already identified, I think it's difficult for us to have a discussion about whether that number should be $750 or should it be $973,000 or should it be $1.2 million. I think we really need to see that budget and see those identified options and what the costs and benefits of those options are.
That
in
first
order to
week
have
in
the
September, we're going to have those meetings with the departments, but there's nothing to say that we can't set another meeting, the Wednesday before we meet with the departments. Or frankly, I think that's going to be the week of public safety. We carve out an hour at the end of the public safety meeting like today, and you could have those discussions on that Wednesday morning.
But I think we really do need to see that budget and see those numbers in order to really have a good discussion about what that added number could be.
Here's what I'm going to do. In the next week, as soon as I can, we will put together some information on that to give you some ideas of what's out there, just our thoughts right now. And we'll get it to all of you so you can start thinking about it. And then when you're comfortable, you let us know and we'll have that meeting. But yeah, this is, the thing is, we have $2.8 million in cuts roughly, and right now $750,000 to reinstate. And so far, in 2 departments, I think I've got 21 positions eliminated just in 2 departments. And so, there's going to be some more of that, and it's going to be a real tough budget for you. It's going to be a real tough one, but I'm sure we'll get through it, and I know it'll be successful when we're done. So if you have anything else, please feel free to come in and see me. If you want me to come see you, I'm more than happy to do that. I think it's important that we have lots of dialogue about this one.
Okay. Anything else on this subject? To be continued later? All right. This brings us to the second opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to make comment at this time? Lori and Georgia have been sitting there antsy all morning, so.
We should have done first public comment. First, I wanted to let you know that the election went very well for Commission on Aging. The results were, just a minute, and I will tell you, 17,483 total votes, 14,099 yes votes, 3,384 no votes, so 80.64% approval by the voters, so we're very happy. I don't know if that's official. I went on the web this morning. I'm not sure if they're completely done counting, but I think it's fairly close, so.
I don't think that's going to change much.
I think all the big townships are in, and cities and villages.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think George is humble, but I will say that congratulations to her and her staff, because it's because of the good work that they do that the community has confidence in their ability to keep doing it. So congratulations to you guys.
And our committee, it was a lot of hard work. Lori's here today. Lori Wells is Director of the Senior Center, and she's also Commission on Aging Board member. But she's here today to give an update on the Senior Center network that we've been working on, kind of behind the scenes and low-key until after we got through with our millage campaign. So I'll let
So we're
Lori give an
officially out of the
update.
gate the day after, right?
Yeah.
We do have somebody on board finally. George McBath is under contract with us through Manpower, which turned out to be a better arrangement than our original plan of contracting with a township that proved to be a little complicated. But George McBath, if you know George, he was previously employed at Beta for many, many years and is very well known throughout the county and has an excellent reputation with developing partnerships and relationships. And so I'm real excited about his ability to meet with the townships and private enterprise to establish the partnerships that we're going to need to be able to make this program take off. He's already met with representatives in Kingsley and Paradise and Mayfield, Fife Lake, Long Lake, Blair, East Bay, and he's meeting with Interlaken this week. And kind of concentrating on those outlying areas to begin with. Been met with wonderful reception. People are very excited about the possibilities, welcoming him with open arms as far as using space that's available, helping us with resources as far as people and locations, and so we're real enthused and excited about that. We're in the process of establishing some senior picnics or in the outlying areas where we will garner the citizen involvement to get them on board with what's happening and get them to volunteer and be a part of it. And we hope to pull those off in August and September. And so we're just securing locations and setting dates. And our first priorities are to take exercise classes and wellness programs and establish some meal sites in those outlying areas. So that's going to be our first push for as far as activities and programs until we find out from the individual citizens exactly other kinds of things that they want. And we're also going to be taking the My Cafe program into these outlying areas, which if you're not familiar with My Cafe, that is a program that's been set up to help seniors apply for food assistance. What they do is we have myself and a couple of volunteers who've been trained to help seniors fill out the application. It's the actual DHS application, which if you've ever seen that, it's 17, 18, 19 pages long and very daunting for a senior to try to complete that. We are trained to help them do that. We do it online for them and make all their copies of all the paperwork that's required and so forth, and they can bypass the interview process with DHS. And our first application went in just 2 weeks ago, and she came in yesterday, and she's getting $200 a month now for food assistance. And that's somebody who would have never have applied, would never have gone through that process, and she's just thrilled that now she's got $200 for food. So that's just one. And I think we've done about 7 applications in the last 10 days. So, and we've got about 50 people signed up so far. We're scheduled through October right now. So we're training some more volunteers and going to take it on the road, like I said, to the outlying areas. So we're moving forward and doing some stuff and excited about the process. It's never as fast as we want it to be, but it's moving in the right direction, so we're excited. I don't know if you have any questions?
I have a question for you.
Sure.
That's great to hear. The person that you're talking about, are they subcontracted to the Traverse City Senior Center? Are they subcontracted through Commission on Aging?
He's a temporary employee for the senior center.
For the senior center.
And then Commission on Aging gave a grant to the senior center, so he's temporarily a contractor, I guess you'd call it, a temporary employee with the senior center.
Okay.
Ross?
Yeah, Lori, I just had a question about the MI Cafe. So these are things you're setting up like at these, locations in like the South County?
Yeah, well, what we'll do is we'll establish office hours where I'll pick a day that I'll be in those areas to do the applications. It's great because we can do it on a laptop and just as long as we have some Wi-Fi access, which through the different libraries we could.
Because so much of this coming from DHS is they want everybody to do it online now. And it's something I imagine some seniors have, some trouble with.
They do, and what's really cool about the My Cafe, yeah, all of us do. What's cool about the My Cafe, and the reason I bring that up is because I know this is televised and I want people out there to know about it, is that only 27% of those seniors who are eligible for food assistance actually apply for the food assistance. And the reason they don't, one, is because the application is daunting and they just can't even begin to think about it. Secondly, they think that they're not as bad off as other people. They don't want to take money out of somebody else's pocket, so they'll get by without it. And thirdly, they don't know about it. And so by having it at the senior center, we can take away all of those barriers for them. And the cool thing about the My Cafe program, the first thing I said was, well, what if we get all these seniors to get this benefit? The state's already broke. How are they going to pay for all these added people? And it's not state money, it's federal money. And so the response back to us was the state wants us to get people on this program because theoretically that $200 that's in that senior's pocket puts $400 back into the economy because now she's going to that grocery store and spending $200, helping somebody else maybe keep their job. And this is, I mean, I just see this being a huge boom for seniors because it's not a real difficult program to qualify for. I know a lot of seniors who are going to qualify for this. You don't have to be down and out, broke, poor, have nothing. They do not count assets to qualify for food assistance. It's strictly income versus your shelter expenses. So if you take your gross income, take out medical expenses, take out shelter income, and if you fall within a certain poverty guideline, you can qualify. And a lot of our average Joe seniors are going to qualify for this program, so it's thrilling to be able to help.
Chris?
I just want to say congratulations on the millage and to thank the Grand Traverse County voters.
Yes. Absolutely.
For their support for seniors in Grand Traverse County. The voters truly make this a quality place to live for our seniors, and I just think it's wonderful.
Yep.
And the margin of victory really speaks volumes.
It does.
And so maybe we should also thank our co-chairs, Chris and Ralph, who are both here. They headed up our committee, and then Lori did a great deal of the work. And so now I'm sure I'm going to have to be
At night and on
repaying
weekends.
her. So my nights and weekends are not over, I don't think, but anyways.
You know, I
So,
have two follow-up quick questions.
Allow
for
us
you.
to remember that this is public comment, it's not dialogue,
Oh, I'm
and it
sorry.
wasn't an agenda item. So, if you have questions, that's fine.
Just two quick questions, follow-up, and I don't know the gentleman that you're talking about who's working for the Traverse City Senior Center, but what process do you go through the Senior Center? Do you post that position?
In this particular case, it was not posted. It was a temporary arrangement. We were looking for the quickest, easiest arrangement. And originally, if you recall from the grant, we were going to contract with Long Lake Township, and that just proved to be a very complicated process. Attorneys got involved and everything, so it kind of slowed the process.
The only thing I know about the name is I recognize it from the Commission on Aging as far as a board member. Is there any conflict there? It's fine, or?
I'm working with Bob Cooney on that. We've been trying to touch base, but he's going to let me know what George has to do. He'll probably have to send a letter, I'm guessing, to at least the Commission on Aging, and he's already announced it, so our board knows, but I'm sure he's going to have to do something in writing to someone. I just haven't heard back from Bob yet, so we've
Okay.
been playing tag, but yeah, there will be something involved.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing, we didn't want to get into an employee situation because we don't know what's going to happen next year. The senior center is also asking for a millage, and we don't know if that's going to pass or not pass. So she didn't want to hire someone, not knowing what's going to happen next year. So this is kind of a temporary situation to see how it works, to see if it's going to work, too. We weren't sure how the townships would receive someone, coming out there. So this is a kind of a pilot test project.
So does that mean upon a successful millage, would you be posting a full-time? or
Absolutely. The
regular-
position would be considered a county position, and it definitely would be posted.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just to let you know that one of our home chore employees, Kurt, is going to Afghanistan in August. We're having a send-off August 17th at Twin Lakes to wish him well, and then we're going to try and webcam. I'm technologically challenged, but I'm going to try, and we're going to send him some care packages. He should be back in about a year, and we are also using a Manpower temporary person to help fill in and we've had another person on medical leave when they're gone. And it happens that this person was a former seasonal employee, so we know that he's been trained in background checks, so that's working out very well for us. We just started in the end of June, beginning of July, our voucher services for waitlist clients. And we have, in the Homemaker program, I believe we had 22 people now taking advantage of those services. We decided to go with the voucher service because we did not want to add any more staff due to budgetary concerns and what's happening with the economy and tax revenue. So we decided that instead we would use vouchers where seniors on our wait list could go out and purchase services from the private sector. So that's been a slow start.
You said senior center wait list, you didn't mean that.
Senior, I didn't mean that, that's not what I meant.
Yeah, that's not what you
no.
meant. I'm trying to think what
Our
you
Commission on Aging service wait lists, they're homemaker, home chore, respite, and home health care, those 4 services. So, and that, we're testing that program too. It was off to a slow start, but it's picking up a little. I think people, it's kind of confusing, so we're trying to help people, walk people through it. And then I think it's a little hard for them to figure out that they can go out and purchase using these vouchers, and then whatever balance they use in services over the voucher amount they have to pay.
I have to stop this, because this truly needs to be an agenda item for the Commission on Aging's report to the RMA committee next week. You know, this is a public comment point,
All right.
and when we start discussing programs and those kind of things, this needs to be an agenda item on the RMA agenda next week.
Well, we thought we were going to be on the agenda today, and I don't know
That's
what
why we got
happened,
up
but-
early.
Yeah, that's why we were here. So anyways.
Because you would normally report to RMA though, right?
Public health and
Oh, no,
safety.
they go to- oh, that's right. Okay, you go to health and safety. All right,
sorry we took
But
too long.
it truly would, when we're going to discuss the programs, it needs to be an agenda item, not under public comment, I believe.
Right.
Or it should have been added to the agenda, or a request should have been made at the beginning of the meeting. Okay? Sorry.
That's all
That's
right.
Georgia?
Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, Commissioner Committee reports? Announcements. I've made a note of 3. One, I passed around a circular letter earlier for everyone to sign up for the Wellness Luncheon, which is held on the 20th of August. Each commissioner is asked to sign up for, a portion of that schedule, and it should be floating around here somewhere. If everyone could sign that up. On August 10th at 9:30 a.m. is a ribbon cutting ceremony for Keystone Hammond Road, held by the Road Commission at 9:30 a.m. Ribbon cutting will take place on Keystone Road, just north of Hammond Road, at 9:30 on the 10th next Tuesday. So anyone that can attend that would be good. The other one is the Mami Ming Swang Garden Club is doing the dedication of a Blue Star Memorial Byway Garden, a tribute to Armed Forces of America, at the Grand Traverse, in the Grand Lawn of the Grand Traverse Pavilions on September 11th of 2010 at 2 p.m., and we've been invited to that, so.
And I think also today, and I apologize, I don't have it with me, but you all got a copy of the invite to the meeting with the governor to discuss the housing program. It's probably in your mailbox upstairs. So please check with Katie afterwards. I think it's at 11 o'clock, but I'm not sure about that. The county
Today?
commission, yes. And I just texted her. She said you were all invited, so I don't know.
Okay.
And the governor is also, is going to be at the Haggerty Center from 5:30 to 7 this afternoon to talk about economic recovery in Michigan. So everyone's invited to that.
Okay. Any other announcements? Is there any need for closed session?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, but I would ask that in addition to asking for a closed session for the Teamsters general contract, we also add the Teamsters command contract.
I would entertain a motion to go into closed session to review the Teamsters general contract negotiation and the Teamsters command negotiations.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion by Fleece, supported by Friend, to go into closed session. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Friend,
Yes.
Inman,
Yes.
Lees,
Yes.
Max Bauer.
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Chairman Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am. We will be going into closed session. We'll go to the back room, and I'm assuming that we will ratify these contracts when we come back?
No.
Or no decision will be made?
No, we're going to ask you for general direction.
Okay, so
No action.
it is the intent that there will be no action when we come back?
Down that way.
That's correct.
Okay. We will stand recessed for the closed session.
Veterans meeting.
Motion to come out of session.
A motion by Inman, supported by Thomas, to come out of closed session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there any other business to come before this board?
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Support.
We're gone. Thank you very much, gentlemen, ladies.
So if anybody wants to get that...